Hello, and welcome. Welcome once again to the Secrets of the High Demand Coach podcast. And I am here with yet another high demand coach, and that is Katherine McCord, who went from being a little girl who sold shares in her company and even played HR, firing her own mother, by the way, to the traveling entrepreneur and speaker that she is now. Katherine has had quite a journey. She currently lives in Florida and runs a company called Titan Management, which she founded in 2014 with the purpose of shaking up HR and recruiting. People operations and inclusion have become her passions, and she's dedicated her life to innovating and growing them. Her missions are integrity, inclusion, and innovation, and she travels the world and the globe evangelizing them. Well, Katherine, so excited to have you here. So excited to dive into the work that you're doing in the HR recruiting space. And before we get to all that, though, I'd love just tell us your story. What were you doing before getting into HR consulting, and how did that lead you to make the leap?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you and your audience today. So, I always enjoyed the world of business. From the time I was very young, I started working at 15. First job was as a car hop at Sonic, and I figured out actually new ways to do that to get myself more money, more and better recognition and things like that. So I kind of always had that mindset of how can we do things better? How can we, improve upon this to make things more efficient, more effective, and make more money, right? So that started very young. I did a lot of work with startup organizations. That kind of became a draw for me because I liked that I could have my hands in a whole lot. There was a lot more contribution to be made, and it was just fun, right? I mean, I'm sure you've been around startups. It's always something crazy, right? Always something changing at the last minute. So it's just a lot of adventure. So for somebody who is neurodiverse like myself, which just means I have a medically visible or diagnosable difference in how I process information, it just works beautifully. So I did that for many years. I ended up working with a startup that was a recruiting agency. I loved the field of work, but I didn't like how they did it. This is just personal preference, not trying to knock them. And with the owner's blessing, a year later, I struck out on my own and started Titan. So, and I'd done HR stuff in the past, and also it just kind of all spiraled, and here we are today.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So if we fast forward to today, what would you say is some of the most important work you're doing for your clients?
Oh gosh, teaching them that just because something is always the way that it's been done doesn't mean that that's an effective way to do
Yes.
it, or even a way that involves integrity. We kind of have to break that mindset and get out of things and just do things the best way as opposed to the comfortable way. So I think that's kind of the best lesson. The second one is that inclusion isn't scary, and inclusion isn't something that we should do because we don't want to get canceled. It's not only part of integrity, it's part of building a profitable and effective company. And there's so much data out there to back it up, including a beautiful study released by Hewlett Packard. And so just teaching those lessons to these companies and helping them to get the mindset right is really the biggest part of my work overall.
Yeah. And that's so important because most folks that are out there, I mean, I work with lots of business owners and leaders, and they're wonderful people. There's jerks everywhere, right? But it's not
All
like this kind of Hollywood stereotype of the evil business person. That's not what's going on.
right.
But
No.
just really wonderful people who want to do right by by all their stakeholders, from shareholders
Yes.
down to the clients and their communities. But they're so busy. There's so many things fighting for their attention. How do you help them recognize when inclusion is not just another should do, but it's actually part of the solution?
Right. So part of what I teach them is, to whenever possible, just go ahead and design with inclusion in mind because that just sets you up for success. A lot of organizations, that's actually the fail. It's not a lack of intent or desire, very much to your point, right? It's not that they're bad humans. They just don't know how to properly design for inclusion. So showing them that and then showing them how it's actually going to help them and help their stakeholders often helps to kind of shift the priority. And one of the main ways that it does is that the more inclusive you are and the more diverse you are, it has to be both. So you have to have the psychological safety for people to then contribute, in an accurate and fulfilling way, and without fear of reprisal or being shut down or any of that. So when you do that, it gives a better voice for your customers too, because they represent your customers, right?
Right.
So it's really a beautiful system that works for every facet of the business. I mean, even down to, like I said, the profits. I mean, Boston Consulting Group released a study saying that once you're truly inclusive, your profits go up an average of 19%.
Wow.
Well, that's pretty substantial. So you want
Yeah.
that, right? So it's just learning to design that way and learning to truly embrace the feedback that people give you. Because one of the main things that entrepreneurs do is somebody will say, hey, this isn't really inclusive. We could do it this way and it would be. And people just dismiss it. Or they go, oh, no, we think it is. You're just being weird. They just kind of keep going, not realizing like, hold on, wait a minute. We need to listen to this. We need to pay attention to this and just make a little pivot. So learning to be flexible. That's the thing I work with people on, is perpetually be flexible, perpetually grow. Don't set something in stone and go, this is how we do it. That's it. That's the end.
Yeah.
Always be flexible and ready to go.
That's so good. Now, one of the things that, especially in the last 20 or so years, good to great, or great, built, built to last onward, right? Jim Collins and some of the early thinkers on kind of culture and values and everything. How do you help groups that are diverse, in all the different facets? How do you help them find that common thread that gives the identity of the group as a whole? How do you help get that togetherness and diversity in the same room?
Really, it's very simple. The only thing that you should ever be concerned about in terms of building um, a mutually beneficial culture is mission, right? As long as you have mission alignment, that's it. Nothing else needs to be in alignment. You don't need to agree on politics. You don't need to like doing the same things. Team building stuff is nonsense. I have a whole other speech about that. Just mission alignment and making sure that we're all on board and excited about where we're trying to go, right? That's it. That's what you have to do. And when you have that, then the rest of it just kind of comes together.
Well, so in your bio there, you jumped into the HR and recruiting space because it needed to get shaken up. Well, what needs to be shaken up?
Well, there are a few things. First of all, our technology is embarrassing, and HR it's so far behind. For instance, the applicant tracking system, which was designed, it's kind of the CRM for people who don't know, for HR, right? This kind of houses all the applicants. And those haven't really advanced much since they were created in the 90s in answer to the job boards, which is nuts. It's just insane. The same basic design is there. The resume needs to get fired. It's been proven ineffective time and time and time again through multiple studies, including by Harvard, LinkedIn, and Stanford also did one on this. And it's just horrible. It creates bias. It's just not an effective way to represent people. And then also the fact that the human resources needs to be taking care of the people. That's why we're shifting you've seen probably the shift to calling it people operations as opposed to human resources. And so we need to start focusing on helping and cultivating the people and working with them as they are, not trying to make everybody fit into a little box, because it does no good to hire all these diverse people and then say, okay, now everybody work exactly the same way. Well, that's counterproductive, right? That doesn't even make any sense. So it's like looking at a lion and say, here, go be a good whale. Like what? That makes no sense.
Right.
So really those are kind of the main things. So the tech has got to go, the resumes got to go, and then we've got to start focusing and on taking care of the people. That should be the job of HR.
Yeah, that's so good. And some of what has been, I would say, some of the more positive benefits of the COVID pandemic, if we can say it that way, are that it's given us the impetus for change in some of these areas. So there was this kind of dramatic, like everyone's at home and engaged, everyone's at home and disengaged. Like a lot of the numbers bounced around through, especially the early days of the pandemic, as things are starting to level off and, dare I say, the new normal. But what would you say are some of the permanent changes that are here to stay in people operations as a result of the pandemic?
I would say inclusion's not going anywhere. The public has started outright at every group. I mean, everybody has in some way, shape, or form is crying out for it. And they're like, hey, look, we need to be fixing this and we need to be working in ways that are better for everybody. So that's one thing that's not going anywhere. Buckle up, folks. This is just it. Another one that I think is just wonderful is that now we're starting to pay a lot more attention to education, which is fantastic. And really understanding that that's part of growth. And that's something I started learning over the years, interviewing people, is that a lot of people say, well, they'll ask somebody, what matters to you, or what do you want in your next job? And when people say growth, when the candidate answers growth, the assumption for years has been that you meant promotion, but that's not it. A lot of people, when you ask them to get specific, they want to learn. They want to improve their skill set. And so companies have started doing this. They've started realizing that this is something that matters, and it's something that's really booming and that's taking off. Um, More creative benefits and more variety in benefits have really come to light. I think that's spectacular. And then the other one, and oh man, some companies are really fighting back on this one right now. They're trying to, is remote work. It's folks that the candidates aren't going to give it up. I am watching people go, turn down jobs left and right because the company wants to insist they come into the office. Right now, I just saw a post this morning and it had all the studies and all of this from LinkedIn on this data. So over 70% of people are saying they want to work from home, but only 17% of jobs on LinkedIn are offering work from home.
Wow.
Companies, figure it out. you know,
Wow.
it's crazy, right? Like that's such a huge disparity.
It's a huge number. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a question in what you just said that I want to come back to. And, the encouraging side of the redefinition of growth is I would argue it's actually easier to provide the type of growth that's wanted now than it was. With so many
Yes.
companies, big and small, you kind of had this dead man's shoes promotion strategy, right? It's like once somebody's out, the next person you only got the next role up when that role was
Right.
vacated. But there's not that same, to an extent, zero-sum game in training and development
Right.
and skills. And so why, though, do you think it's still so hard for executive teams to get behind that definition of growth, even when you could argue it's in their advantage?
Because so many people have this very backward mindset that the only way to be successful is to get promoted and make, tons of more money and have this very impressive title. That's completely backwards. And I have a whole other speech about, why we're looking at all of this very backwards anyway. It's all just different skill sets. I don't think a CEO is any more important than the ground level employee, or any more talented even necessarily. It's just different, and we have this idea that executives are better than floor managers. Completely disagree with that. So, but we have this mindset that we have to get an impressive title and make more money in order to grow. And that's not it. Or that's what's important in a career. Well, there's nothing wrong with being amazing at what you do. And, that you just love what you do. You see this a lot with like nurses and medical professionals. You see it with IT people. A lot of developers don't want to do anything other than develop, but they want to be really good at that. And that trickles into other professions as well. So to your point, it's wonderful because it's so much easier now to give people what they want and by the way, free in a lot of cases. Like there's tons of free courses that you can send people to, free to cheap certifications that you can give people using sites like Allison, Udemy, even Stanford University has some free online stuff they do from time to time. So check that out. But it really is just breaking this mindset that you're so much cooler if you're an executive and that's the only way to hit success. We need to redefine success.
And the flip side of that is that employees feel that same way as well, right? There are folks who don't want a management role. They don't want to do anything that a manager does, but they want the title because that's kind of what's been baked into what they've been taught as well. So how do we help? Not even that it's a manager's job with this, but how can we collectively help coach people out of it's not about the next promotion, it's about something else.
Yeah, it's about success in what you're great at, right? In what matters to you. So I think rewarding things other than promotion. So recognizing excellent jobs, recognizing someone who's gotten that certification, maybe changing their title, or putting, some kind of recognition next to their title, I think is a great way to do that. But celebrating that, we forget to celebrate these wonderful things that people do. Like if somebody completes a project that helps you land a big client that makes the company millions, why are you not celebrating that? Why are you not telling, like having a little party for them, or sending out something in the company newsletter about how awesome they did? Celebrate these things. That
Yeah.
just makes such a difference. And encouraging that, and not treat, again, going back to the not treating people as less than because they don't want to move to this other thing and have to deal with the humans, right? But they just want to be really great where they are. So I think celebration and changing the cultural mindset, and telling people you are amazing at what you do. And this is not only enough, we celebrate it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. I've held for a while that culture is what you compensate, communicate, and celebrate. It is
Yeah.
every bit as equal and as important. And I love that you brought that point, because I think, yeah, and I've been guilty of this some more times than I can count. But it's like we're ready to take the next hill. What we
Yeah.
need to do is just stand there and celebrate the one that we're on.
Right.
And both at the company level, but also at an individual level.
Yes.
I want to touch on something you brought up earlier, and I saw it as I was doing some research. This idea of neurodiversity,
Yeah.
and the question I have is, why should CEOs and business leaders be paying attention to neurodiversity?
Well, number one, they probably have it. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of information. In fact, I published some of the data on this, on one of my sites, that a lot of entrepreneurs have neurodiversity. First of all, including some very famous ones, such as the founders of Hewlett Packard, Stephen Hawking, Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, so on and so forth. It's really just something that's very prevalent in their communities that may help them to learn about themselves, but also because neurodiversity, it it creates wonderful, wonderful results when utilized properly, but you have to let people work in a way that's natural to them. So Hewlett Packard did this study where they created a neurodiversity cultivation program in honor of their founders. And so didn't just hire for neurodiversity, which is some examples would be cerebral palsy, autism, ADHD, bipolar, obsessive compulsive disorder. It's a very broad spectrum. So they not only hired for this, but they cultivated it, because science, and you can look this up in the National Institute of Health, National Library of Medicine, Harvard, so on and so forth, Psychology Today, neurodiversity science has started to catch up and realize that there are many benefits to this. So like innovation, hyper analytics, you can have 3D model thinking, so on and so forth. So Hewlett Packard cultivated all this, and they said, what do you need in order to be comfortable? How do you want to work? Whatever it is you want to do it. And when they did that, productivity went up, and so high that that team became 33% more productive than their counterparts.
Well,
Their innovation went up, their employee satisfaction went up, the health of the employees went up, and ultimately, of course, their profits and customer satisfaction increased as well. So they need to be paying attention to this, because this is what's going to accelerate their company in ways that they never saw possible. But you have to not only hire for it, you have to then cultivate it and let people work in ways that are comfortable and natural to them.
yeah. Yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, most folks, you give them that list, especially if you were to put it on to your point earlier, stick it on a resume, right? Those aren't
Right.
necessarily the best resume treatments, and it would terrify a lot of folks. But you're right. There is a genius inside of that. There
Oh, yeah.
is, in the same way that we're looking for diversity across all these other spectra, if you will.
Mhm.
Doing it from just the way that folks think is so important. We have it in our family, and so I get to see it firsthand, and both the positive side of it, but also the negative side. And more often than not, our experience has been the greater world tries to fix it instead of letting it be and letting it breathe. So I
Right.
love both the study and your mission there.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in love with it. I actually was able a couple of months ago to speak to some United Nations delegates about neurodiversity and sustainability. And one of the things I really highlighted for them is I said, this is the most obvious progression in the human in the human evolution. And there are even genes that have been tied to the same genes that are tied to autism are the same ones that caused human evolution. And so, this is part of how we're growing as humanity. So of course we want to steer into that and use all these beautiful new talents that we're developing as a human race, right?
Mm.
And everybody has challenges, everybody has things that they're not good at. So that's all it is on the disability side of neurodiversity. And a lot of times it's sadly social disability, not so much the medical. It is, and that society has gone, we're not here for that. We don't like this, boo to that. And so when you let go of the social disability, a lot of this elevates.
Mm.
So it's really fun. And plus it's cool. Like when you just start getting all these people with all these different mindsets in the same room and just really letting the mask come off and letting them go, the most amazing, fun, cool things happen. And it's really funny and incredibly energizing to watch. It is.
Oh, so good. So good. So I've got a couple questions for you I like to ask everyone. So the first one's this. What's the biggest secret you wish wasn't a secret at all? Or what's that one thing that you wish everybody watching or listening today knew?
Oh gosh. I would say that responding in curiosity, not ego, will accelerate not only your life, but your career in ways that you could never imagine. So
Wow.
break your own ego mechanism and learn to ask questions, not make assumptions, and not feel the need to have everything be the way that you've learned it. Just learn from everything and everybody at all times.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true. And it's that separation, right? Separating the stimulus from the response. So Viktor
Right.
Frankl, I think, is the last great human freedom. And I think it's such a big part of even tying it back to what you said earlier on this idea of psychological safety. When we don't approach things this way, I found it's almost impossible to create an environment for any extended period of time that is safe.
100%. Yes, absolutely. When you shut people down, and a lot of times we do it unintentionally, right? And
Yeah.
people, when I say ego mechanism, people get kind of defensive. And I'm like, no, everybody has it. We're all born with it. We just have to learn when to turn it off, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
that's it right there.
it's like, okay, no, brain, we're safe. We don't need this. Thank you so much. I can ask a question. This is okay.
Yeah.
And when you start to learn from people, just the way that changes you and the way that you can start to think in new ways, and your mind is then able to process at a completely different level, and we start climbing that Maslow's hierarchy pyramid, and it's fascinating. We just open up in whole new ways. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. All right. One more question for you here, and then I want to make sure folks know how they can get in touch with you. So take off your HR recruiting consultant hat, speaker hat, put on your CEO hat, and talk to us, what's the next stage of growth look like for you as a leader, and what challenge we have to overcome to get there?
Oh gosh, because apparently I don't have enough going on in my life. I decided to start this whole kind of neurodiversity cultivation and unleashing project called the Neuroverse. And so that's my next big jump. We're going to be providing a lot of resources. We're going to be having events, community opportunities, and projects all around neurodiversity and promoting a fully neuro-inclusive world. And to get there, I'm going to need all the cool people along the way, a huge tribe, which I already have a wonderful one, but an ever expanding tribe. And I am going to have to definitely focus on just letting the visionary side of me take over and drive, and then handing off, delegating past that, which can be very hard for me. I can be kind of a control freak, but that's what I've got to do.
Oh my goodness, I absolutely love it. Sign me up. I want to know more. And on that note, how can folks get in touch with you? How can they hear more about this project and what you do as a speaker as well?
Right, absolutely. So reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find there, and I'm always on LinkedIn. You can message me direct. You can go to my speaker site, which is kmccordspeaking.com. You can go to join the neuroverse.org, and that's neuroverse neuroverse. And so you can go to that site, or you can go to my professional site, which is titanmanagementusa.com.
Fantastic. Well, we'll drop all of those in the links below, so you can grab each one. Please go check it out. You will not be disappointed. Well, Katherine, thank you so much for being on the show. What an honor and privilege. And for those of you watching and listening today, you know that you mean the world to us. Your time and attention go without saying. And so I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I know I did, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Take care.